So still do the same thing, go down. Then
I'd like to share with you, one of my opera teachers often says, to take a lesson is better than watching 1,000 times of the master's recording. To perform once on stage is better than taking 1,000 lessons. So Beijing Opera is a tradition of esteemed value in our Chinese culture. And sadly to say, it is not something one can take one lesson or two to be good at, but it requires a long and arduous apprenticeship. So both group training and private lessons are needed to address the professional development needs. So that's where I commit a lion's share of my leisure time. This is because Beijing Opera is a synthesis of 4 skills: singing, recitation, body movement, and comeback. So a lot of people are deceived by the term opera. They're thinking about singing only, but it's not. It's all 4 skills together. So private lessons are important, in particular when the performers have attained a certain level of knowledge and experience. For example, for the singing skill, I must practice daily the use of breath, the control of tempo and the rhythm of a melodic passage, and customize that to a specific character, and also the accurate and smooth pronunciation of each Chinese word in the lyric. That is important to achieve the overriding principle of beauty in this art form. And because high pitch is a positive aesthetic value in Beijing Opera, a singer like me would pitch the song at the very top of my vocal range. However, you don't want to disturb people, and people complain about the noise, right? So I have to practice every day, either walking on a quiet trail as part of my early morning workout or in the basement of my house. Stage performance is another part of the continuous learning, as this is a means of putting theory into practice. As a performing art, there are some aspects of the Beijing Opera that one could only learn and understand on stage. For example, the building of a character through apprehension of the history and the culture in the story, the workmanship of singing and the body movement, as well as the seamless interaction with other performers. So as we all know, good performers will inspire each other on stage.
I usually practice the Jinghu especially when those of my family want live music to harmonize their singing of Beijing Opera. And when I'm alone, I usually practice solo pieces or even empty string for foundational exercises. Yeah.
Once I went to Office Depot to print the playbills and flyers for DCBBO's annual performance. When I revealed to the staff who helped me with the printing that the fully costumed figure in the flyer was me, she was shocked. She said, "Is this really you?" I said, "Yeah, yes, that's me." And she was startled. And she said, "Oh my God, I could not believe it. It's so beautiful. You're a totally different person. I must see a live performance of Beijing Opera." So this interaction put a big smile on my face.
Yeah, I also have many stories, but there was once I was in the third grade, so maybe I was about 8 years old, um, when I first performed a piece of Beijing opera for my elementary school's talent show. And I remember being quite nervous to perform it as I knew nobody could understand, and I did not think that they'd enjoy. But the next day when I went to school, um, my third grade teacher gave me a shout out in front of the whole class for performing something so unique. So I definitely felt proud, but also very relieved. Yeah, challenging indeed, as um of course, definitely the unfortunately limited opportunities for practicing Jinghu, I think, in the US, especially as a college student. There's Jinghu is very loud, and really there's not much you can do when when you're in a dorm with very thin walls. Um, but also challenging in that in the especially trying to help people get exposed and understanding such a performing art, and usually one that they've never heard of. But I think it is also very rewarding to see people when they get exposed to Beijing opera and see all this unique music, colorful makeup, and ornate costumes. I think uh, I've been actually surprised sometimes to see how fascinated people can be.
For me, the most challenging part of Beijing Opera study is that you know you are never good enough. There are so many things to learn. There are always areas for improvement. It is an art form that requires workmanship in all aspects. Unlike Western operas, Beijing opera is suggestive, symbolic, and conventional. The overriding principle of performance is beauty. All performances had assessed by the beauty of their singing and stage movement by experts as well as sophisticated audiences. If you're not doing a good job, okay, you'll get a hard time in the theater. So that's something that's really challenging. However, so although I have practiced the Beijing Opera for 15 years, I still feel like a primary school student. But on the other hand, it is nice that there's always something new for me to learn about this art form. And it is like a bottomless treasure land for me to dig. I think I will never be bored and always have incentive to grow. Just like what Confucius said, 学而时习之，不亦乐乎? Isn't it a pleasure for one to always have something new to learn and practice it continuously? So that's both a challenging thing, but also an interesting motivation. Just to share with you, we have 1,400 repertoire in Beijing Opera. And since I shared with you my performing school is Zhang style, Zhang elegant female role style. So my major repertoire would be in that cluster. So including the Humanity and Justice, which is a story of a poor woman struggling to seek justice against her husband who abandoned her and the family for fortune. In Chinese, 秦香莲. And Princess Chai and her general, a story of a princess who managed to select her own husband in ancient China, despite of all the social barriers. So 状元梅 and Wisdom at the Riverside, a young widow who used her knowledge and wisdom to attain a successful second marriage. So in Chinese, 望江亭. And I can go on and on, but those are the top three in my heart. Thank you.
And for me, I'd say my favorite would probably be 贵妃醉酒 or The Drunken Beauty. Very well known Beijing opera, probably one of the most well known. And I really love playing a Jinghu part for it because of, I guess, the many solo parts that I could get, and practicing its solo parts are always like very fun. And highly recommend seeing it. There are many unforgettable memories, of course, but if I were to speak of one, it'd probably be getting on China Central Television's overseas program for the 2009 Chinese New Year Gala as a 7-year-old, singing a short piece of Beijing opera. I don't think I'd ever forget that one.
So for me, I once performed an act from Humanity and Justice in DC, 秦香莲折子戏. After the show, an old couple came to the backstage and said to me, "Your performance is too short." We were very touched. What happened next to the heroine? I think this kind of moment is the highest award for a performer could possibly get. So I would keep that to my heart.
Sure, yeah. Of course, I'd suggest learning Chinese to some decent level first, which is, I realize, already very difficult in and of itself. But I think that one could really begin to appreciate Beijing opera with an interest in traditional Chinese culture, and really learning the backstory for each opera and their characters.
Yeah, based on my experience, Sadie, that non-Chinese natives are more motivated by personal love and enthusiasm to an art form that is foreign to them. So Issac is not a non-Chinese native. He was born in a Chinese family, so he can trace back to the, 1,000 years ago, he's still Chinese. So when I'm talking about the non-Chinese natives, there's really, they cherish, in my view, based on my experience, they cherish Beijing opera and use it to promote intercultural communication rather than the desire of becoming a performer one day. And they also want to impress their Chinese friends and colleagues, see, okay, I can be so high quality, and I learned something very unique, high quality culture elements. So they want to impress their neighbors. So that is why, in my view, I think if I disagree with you, the language barrier is not an issue, because pursuit of beauty is human nature, regardless of gender or ethnic origin. For example, I appreciate Italian opera, and I do not understand at all what they're singing about, but I just amused and impressed by their metallic voice and the acoustic rendition of whatever things. I don't understand the word, but I'm still impressed. So my advice, in order to better appreciate Beijing opera, one might get some basic knowledge of this performing art by attending an introduction workshop such as this one today. Then watch a simple show and get some direct sense, and then come back to the workshop again. Try to follow the storyline and appreciate the cultural element first before force yourself into the full appreciation of the workmanship. And just let me share with you, my husband, who is a white American, always support me and is sitting in the audience whenever I perform. But he said, funnily, all of a sudden, in the middle of my performance, people will cheer up, and he looked around and, what happened? Why is it good? And he said, okay, let me just put my hands together so I do not feel embarrassed. And later on, he would brag to people sitting next to him, so that's my wife. So I'm connected to that performer. So I think do not forcing yourself to have the full appreciation of why it is good and when it is good at the beginning. So the tutorials conducted by DCBBO could be helpful for audience to get more information later on the performance movement, what does it mean and why it is good compared to the other person who's doing the same character. So if after acquiring some basic knowledge of Beijing opera classics and you'd like to have a deeper dive in the performing art, to learn some basic martial art display skills might be an easier start than civil plays. Of course, Issac is a genius. He's both good at the Western violin and also Chinese art. It is very, very unique. But for ordinary people, I would suggest that you start with some very basic martial art display skills, because those skills focus more on body movement and action. Those are more tangible skills, while civil plays focus on singing, which are more intangible skills, more complicated to acquire. So this kind of learning and practice would further enhance your capacity of appreciating a live and recorded performance. So when you have, if you stand up, stretch a little bit, okay, so you have the basic standing position, T-shape feet, okay. So you stand up, you have a T-shaped feet. And then you put one hand here. So you put one hand here, and the other hand, you just follow, you look at your hand, do a circle, and make a fist. So 1, and stretch out, 2, and then this hand up, 3, always follow your hand, and 4. Mountainous shoulder. A general is about to speak, so he has a lot of air, before he does that. So this is just calls the attention of the audience. I'm about to do something. So mountainous shoulder. Now for a female, so I'd like to see that. I also want to see something cloudy hand, right? It's a little bit like Tai Chi. Also use 2 hands together, because the Chinese opera is really symbolic, and the most basic convention skills is round. So you always do it like this. This is a girl. You see the difference, Sadie? This is different. It's very, very different. This is a man, and this is a girl. So I think the most, there's a lot of similarity. For example, you mentioned the space in the mouth. We do have a space in your mouth. However, because of the Chinese word, the pronunciation, we require that you have a tightened lips like this. And then, but inside your mouth, the mouth is a lot of space, and different schools have different focus area of the mouth to pronounce the word and project the voice. And the very important aspect of how we project our voice is to use of breath, as I mentioned. That every day I need to learn how to pull the breath from my lower belly and to the middle of my stomach and just hold it here and put it all the way and get all the air, get it ready here, but do not let it out, all of a sudden, but steadily, maybe for a minute, and then project it either from the middle of my mouth or from the back of the scalp. So even without a speaker or microphone, I can still make a lot of people hear what I'm singing. So that's something where we're trying the use of breath is very important, and also which part of the mouth you're using to pronounce, to project that sound is very important feature of different schools. But we do learn a lot from the Western opera singing and how to sustain your voice. And my teacher always tells me that your voice should be high but not sharp, should be low but not weak. But the use of breath is the most important training part in the Beijing Opera. Issac?
Yeah, well, you pretty much covered it, but I remember like my dad usually emphasized that using the air from like in the bottom of the stomach up to sing and um trying to do that to project instead of using I guess what's up here because you get tired a lot quicker if you're trying to only use I guess the throat or whatever's here to sing instead of using the air from underneath. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
I
it's
heard it's
not.
like pretty hard to master though.
So we try to practice the use of lip, tongue, teeth, and the comprehensive use of the mouth. So all this needs to practice. And my teacher keeps on saying, tighten your lips, tighten your lips. When you prepare some air in your mouth and let it wait, and then you pronounce, and then your voice will be very powerful rather than open your mouth very wide and then you cannot have a enduring kind of length of singing. So what we're talking about is really our experience in the past 40 months. Ever since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, DCBBO has been launching the online workshops, to share knowledge like this, to build the foundation. And we also have some kind of demo performance. Through this online engagement, the performance itself is not an impossible mission. For example, like what today, we have the chat, right? We talk to people and people, posting questions. And then before such a workshop or online performance, we throw out surveys to see what do you want to hear and what is the knowledge gap. Okay, so there's a lot of things to learn to appreciate Beijing Opera, and when we do not have the COVID-19 and people rush to the theater to see and then come back home, maybe only appreciate 30% of the live performance. But with the online thing like this, that we can share more knowledge on what I just said, why this one is better vis-a-vis the other one is better, and what is the story behind, and why this I need to wear this bright yellow robe instead of another one. So a lot of knowledge sharing and a lot of build up and a lot of connection with the audience have been done over the past 40 months. And we do look forward to see you guys all in our live performance very, very soon. Thank you.
Oh, and maybe I just wanted to add one thing about the Jingju or Beijing Opera audiences that I think it is definitely very special. I think it's very interesting that the audience itself can cheer and make noise in the middle of an act. And I think, well, that's something I don't usually do in Western opera performances. So I think that's really special, and that just goes to show how engaged a Jingju audience can be, and like how important it is to have a live audience.
Because each costume is customized to a character. If you like that character, you're going to like that. It's not sometimes if your character is a poor woman, you're going to have some relatively plain piece of cloth with less decoration. Vis-a-vis a high-ranking royal family character, you will have more elaborated color and the decorations in embroideries. But no, I think I love all of them, and I love to play with them, and I take very good care of them. All these are, you cannot send to laundry, you cannot send to dry clean, so we need to take very care of that, very good care of it, like a treasure, like a delicate flower in the hand. So I love them all, so I speak to them.
Yeah, I guess I actually do have a favorite because well, I haven't performed nearly as much as Louisa has, but that there was one costume I wore that really has a that I should say is really special to me, and that was the I played a emperor role for in the the opera is called 朱颜在. I'm not sure what the English
Banquet
name.
for Benefit.
Yeah, okay, that one. Yeah, and I played the main role, and the emperor had a really like long and ornate orange costume, and I remember feeling really empowered wearing it. So yeah, that costume. I think should I perform in a large crowd, I would still be, but definitely performing more and experiencing performing more definitely helps. But I mean, I feel like the nerves will always be there, and that's okay.
In the 1960s and 70s, there is a huge movement in how to, talk stories more about the ordinary people, like the workers, the peasants, and the soldiers, vis-a-vis only talk about the emperors and empresses. So during that 10 years, there's a lot of experiment and test to see how to adapt the traditional Beijing opera into the modern age. And some of them are quite successful. For example, in one of the opera, there is a very genius combination of the Beijing Opera violin, Jinghu, with the Western Symphony together to accompany the soldier march all the way to the mountain to fight with the bandit. And then also there's a lot of Western music, brass music, instrument accompanying the dancing and stage movement of that hero traveling all the way to the mountain of Tiger. And also in the past, the Beijing Opera has different acts and different scenes. And then in these 10 years, this modern opera try to adapt the theory of Stanislavski's, reality theory. For example, we used to have one table and two chairs as the only stage setting. And then it really depends on how the performers interact with these objects. Then the object can become a mountain or a bed. However, in the modern opera, we use more real scene. Maybe you see the trees or you see the scenery. So those are the kind of experiment to see how it can be, moved into a more modern age. However, there's very, very controversial discussion on whether these changes, these reforms, has dragged the Beijing Opera away from the ancient beauty and then move into something that not so Beijing Opera authentic. And because I understand that in 2010, the UNESCO registered intangible cultural heritage is the Beijing Opera of its own nature rather than the adapted one. And because all the modern operas, modern adaptation of Beijing operas would have to abandon some of the conventions that the Beijing Opera has been living through for about 200 years. So there's a lot of discussion on that. There's different schools on whether we should keep the old way. And there's other schools saying, okay, how we move forward. So there's still a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, and a lot of experiment these days.
I will be back home usually during breaks, like summer breaks, winter breaks, and so I definitely think that uh, I can definitely participate in a lot of DCBBO's workshops, performances. So definitely, I'll still be engaged in that. Um, and actually, interestingly enough, for a winter class I was taking here, it was called Documentary Film in Contemporary China, and actually, for the final, we had to do a project that was making a film, and I actually made a film documenting a few interviews, and actually Louisa was one of the interviewees, and where I interviewed a lot about Jingju and actually a lot of content that we've been talking about today. And so I'm definitely thinking about sharing that work I've done as well around.